Hello everybody, this is Dr. Cole. It is Sunday afternoon, April 27th, and this is the announcement for week 15 of Political Science 1013 for the spring 2025 term on the 16-week schedule. Okay everybody, the final exam and the term paper due date for those who are doing a term paper is not this week but next week. So we'll be winding things down next week. Final grades are to be turned in on Monday, May 12th, which is 1 week from tomorrow, here as of Sunday afternoon when I'm speaking to you. 2 weeks from tomorrow. Tomorrow being the 28th, and grades are due May 12th. So try to keep that straight. But in any case, we are coming to the end of the term. We're doing our last discussion tomorrow and Tuesday. Today and Tuesday for those of you who will be seeing this Monday morning. Some of you may not see it Sunday evening when it goes out. But in any case, Monday the 28th and Tuesday the 29th, we'll have discussion 6 on Congress and Senator Lankford. I'm sure that for many, if not most of my students, Senator Lankford is one of your senators. He's one of the senators from Oklahoma. We do draw students from a 5-state area and beyond, but I'm sure for many, if not most of my students, Lankford is your senator. You've been assigned a lengthy interview with him that appeared several months ago, going back, I believe, to before the election, from the New York Times Magazine. And you'll see and hear him, you read the interview, and he'll discuss the immigration bill he worked on with 2 other senators, one an independent and another a Democrat. They were trying to get immigration legislation passed, but it turned out that ultimately Donald Trump did not want the legislation passed. At that time, he was a former president and presidential candidate. So Trump did not want this legislation passed, and many Republicans did not either. So what you're asked to do is read through this interview and see what you think. Should Lankford have tried to work on getting a bill passed or not? Should he have worked with other senators who were not Republicans? He seemed to think that that was part of his job description, to work across party lines, but Trump and other Republicans were not happy with him. So see what you think of that. And we'll do the discussion tomorrow, Monday, and the following day, Tuesday. You all got that assignment a couple of weeks ago, I think. I hope some of you will have looked at that interview already. If you try that link and it doesn't work, contact me. I'll try to get that material to you. But I hope that link has been set up in such a way that it'll work, and you all can look at that interview with Lankford and see what you think of it. Anyway, the discussion will be taking place. It's now Sunday afternoon, so tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday, the 28th and 29th, and that will be our last of 6 discussions for the term. Okay, so the final exam is, I believe, Thursday the 8th, and term papers are due Friday the 9th, grades being due then the following Monday the 12th. I've talked to some students already about a term paper. It is optional. It can take the place of a low grade. Okay. The formal deadline for contacting me about a term paper topic was this past Friday the 25th. If you want to do a term paper, please don't put off contacting me any longer. It is a little late. It is past the formal deadline. But if you want to go ahead and contact me, please don't put it off any more than another day. And if you want to take that on, it's not required. It's optional. It can take the place of a low exam grade. For the exam, the material will be Units 7 and 8, the class notes, plus 4 articles I've asked you to read, 2 on the Supreme Court and 2 on Congress. Those links should work. If they do not, please contact me. The exam is approaching, so it'd be a good time to try those links sometime in the next couple of days. And if there's problems with any of the links, I can get that material to you well in advance of the exam on Thursday the 8th. Okay, so discussion Monday and Tuesday the 28th and 29th. Tomorrow and Tuesday, as I'm speaking Sunday afternoon, going into Sunday evening. Then the final exam on the 8th, and term papers due for those who are doing them on the 9th. All right, in the remaining time we have today, I would like to begin going through with you very briefly the Unit 8 class notes, and we will finish up with that next time. I'll finish up on Unit 8 on Congress, and we'll say a bit more about the final exam readings and end-of-term business so that everybody will be straight, and with any luck we can get everybody through this successfully here in the spring term. But in any case, looking at Unit 8 on Congress, we finished the term with this. Actually, the Constitution begins with Article 1 about Congress, which often is taken as an indication that the founders thought that Congress was central to the system of government they were setting up. We begin by looking at the kind of people who are represented in Congress. And what we try to say is Congress has become more diverse and closer to a snapshot or proportional representation of the whole American public than it used to be. It's still not quite there. We still don't have 50-50 representation, male versus female. Minority groups, people of color, are still a bit underrepresented, but we're closer to that than we used to be. And I try to discuss some of the problems with that and why that might be, especially with regard to women. Obstacles to women's representation in Congress, although women are much better represented than they used to be. Okay. We then try to go through and take a look at the members of Congress from this area. It's a good idea that everybody knows who their members of Congress are, especially your member of the House of Representatives, for reasons that will become clear as you read through those class notes, and your senators as well. Okay. I also try to look closely at all the members from the state of Oklahoma, all the House members, and their districts. Because some of them represent urban city districts. Some of the districts are more far-flung. For those of you in the Oklahoma Panhandle, your member is Frank Lucas, and he represents a district that starts in the Panhandle, extends into western Oklahoma, right up to the suburbs of both Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So he has a quite far-flung district that I'm sure is a challenge for him to represent everybody in that district. Okay. Now, scholars of Congress say there's really two sides to studying Congress. There's the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C., where legislation is debated and business is conducted. And then there's the relations that members try to maintain with their constituents in their home district, in no small part for the sake of trying to get reelected. Okay? So, Congress in Washington and members of Congress at home. And we look at the at home part first, and we move on in the second half of these class notes, what I'll be talking about next time. Look at how Congress does business in the halls of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. It's important to note that members are pretty much on their own when it comes to running for Congress. And we talk mostly about the House of Representatives as opposed to the Senate. The Senate is much smaller. The House of Representatives is over 4 times as big. They have to run more often, every 2 years instead of 6. So we have, if we look back through the years, through the decades, far more election campaigns for the House to look at than for the Senate. Members run on their own. They raise their own money. They put their own advertising and public relation campaigns together for the purpose of winning the right to use that party label, either Republican or Democrat, in the general election. It really is more of a free-for-all than you might think. The national party organizations in Washington, D.C. and around even the state parties have relatively little to do with it, little involvement. Potential candidates are pretty much on their own. We contrast that with the British system, where, for instance, parties like the Labour and Conservative parties are set up in every district and take an active hand in selecting that candidate and making sure that that candidate harbors views that are consistent with what the national Labour and Conservative parties believe in the UK. It's really not that way at all in the United States Congress. Members are pretty much on their own, okay, trying to get elected and reelected. Now, in the House of Representatives especially, there's been a history of individuals getting elected and then being fairly safe through their careers for at least a decade or so. Okay. Once they've served a term or two, they are pretty safe on average for about 6, 8, 10 years in office beyond that. Okay. What are the reasons for that? Well, there are any number of things that members do to reinforce their prospects and enhance their prospects for re-election. We talk about the concepts of casework and pork barrel. Okay? And casework and pork barrel are really two sides of the same coin. They are ways of doing favors for people in your district. Pork barrel is one of those colorful political terms we find in political history that goes all the way back to the Civil War and pre-Civil War era, the antebellum era as we call it. It refers to basically spending projects that members try to get inserted in the budget so that they can take credit for that spending in the home district. And they can represent to people that they've gotten some of the taxpayers' dollars and return them back to the district, to the people who paid the taxes. It could be projects for the district as a whole, or very often it might be for a particular municipality, city, town, or county within that district. Okay. But spending projects that a member tries to get put into the budget so that that member can take credit for that spending with the folks back home. We mentioned the concept of earmarks. Okay. The House Republicans tried to do away with earmarks, and they were prohibited for a while, but they've put them back now because members insisted that that was something they needed to do to build influence and take credit and enhance their prospects for re-election. Now, casework, we call that a sort of pork barrel on a much smaller scale. Favors done or work done for individuals or families rather than cities or municipalities or counties. Okay. Now, in our Unit 8 links note that you got, we mentioned, we try to walk you through Representative Lucas's website and what he tries to do for people in his district who need help with the federal government. Members of Congress have staff to help them with this. Typically what happens is, suppose someone in the district is receiving a Social Security old age check or disability benefit every month, and then something happens and the check doesn't come. And so this individual doesn't have the income they're depending on. Okay. Well, if you can't get anywhere with the Social Security office, you might contact Lucas's office or whoever is your member of the House of Representatives, and you probably won't talk to Lucas right away, rather it'll be someone on the staff, and they will open a casework file for you. And that office will try to intervene with the bureaucratic agency and get your problem taken care of. It could be somebody who is immigrated into the United States and there's family members overseas that they would like to come and unify the family, but they're having trouble with that. Or it could be someone in business who wants to contract with the federal government and do business with the government and sell their products or services to the government. House Member's Office might be able to help you with that. But such things are known as casework. Okay. And if you go to Lucas's website, he walks you through and instructs you on what to do, how to contact his office if you are having problems with one agency of the federal government or another. And he lists the entities of the federal government that people might most be likely to interact with or to have a problem with. So these are things that members can do. It really doesn't have all that much to do with politics. Okay? It really doesn't matter what your politics are. If you're getting a governmental benefit and your House member's office gets that restored, where, well, you're liable to consider yourself to be in that member's debt, no matter what your politics are. So that's something they like to do. It helps them build influence and curry favor, shall we say, with the folks back home, and it enhances their prospects. And it's something every member of the House of Representatives is expected to do. Senators do it too, but you would probably start out with your House member's office if you were having a problem of that kind with a bureaucratic unit of the federal government. So these are the things that members do. Casework and pork barrel. We use the example in the class notes of a jet aircraft the Defense Department was purchasing. How widely spread out across the country the various components of that jet aircraft will be. Members of Congress want it spread out as far as it can across the country. I mean, the fuselage will be made here, and the tires here, and the electronics there, and the wings somewhere else. Okay, so that it's apparently so that as many members of Congress can take credit for it as possible. That's really not unusual in the United States Congress as we have known it. Everybody, I discuss for a few pages in the class notes the work of a late political scientist, Richard Fenno, F-E-N-N-O, Fenno. Professor Fenno is dead now. He was regarded as one of the most important, widely read, and I think the most accessible political scientists you could ever want to study. And he studied Congress closely. He interviewed members of Congress, went to Capitol Hill, knew a great many members of Congress, and tried to study very closely what the day-to-day life was like of a member. One thing we mentioned is the life cycle, the career cycle of a member. Okay. The kind of things that might happen to a member, mistakes that a member might make that will leave that member open to a challenger and might bring an end to that person's career after a decade or a decade and a half. Because one thing they all have to ask themselves is at some point, how much is re-election worth? Okay. You can devote all your time, or as much as possible, to traveling back and forth back home to build up ties with people in your district. But at some point, you may have to spend more time in Washington, D.C. to get other things accomplished. Fenno mentions there's re-election on the one hand, and on the other hand, getting legislation passed that reflects your views on what the policy of the federal government ought to be, or working your way up to become, say, the chair of an influential, powerful committee or subcommittee, or maybe even becoming part of the leadership of your party in the House of Representatives. Those are all things that will require more time in Washington and less back home. Okay, so these are decisions that members have to make. And if they spend more time in Washington, that may leave them susceptible to getting out of touch with the folks back home, making a mistake and doing something that leads to their defeat. Or they may simply get fed up with it after they've served a couple of decades. They've had enough. They don't do it anymore. They retire. Many of them will end up running for governor or U.S. senator, and that brings their career in the House to an end. Now, one thing I would say about Fenno, the work he did goes back to the 1970s, and I'm sure many things about serving up there are the same and many things are different. One thing to keep in mind is that in Fenno's day, going back to the 1970s, there were many more competitive districts than there are now. Now, we are told that out of 435 districts in the House, maybe 50 of them are competitive. In other words, they could go either way between the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, that's a matter of interpretation. Okay? Things could happen to make more districts competitive. Okay? If the incumbent president is popular, that will tend to make more districts safe for the incumbent's party. If the incumbent's unpopular, then maybe some districts that we think of as safe could become more competitive. But on the whole, other things being equal, people who follow this kind of thing closely will tell you that out of 435 members, only 50 of them anymore have really competitive seats that could go either way, okay, to the Republicans or the Democrats. Otherwise, in those remaining 350 or 400 seats, what happens is, if you control your state's legislature, by and large, part of the spoils of victory is that you get to draw your state's congressional districts. It's always worked that way. Most of the states do it that way. Some do not. Some turn it over to an independent commission. But, by and large, what we find is that state legislatures try to draw as many safe seats as possible. They want to give more safe seats to their own party rather than the opposition. But it tends to make everybody happy if most everybody can have a safe seat. So what we find now is maybe 375 or so seats are safe for either the Republicans or the Democrats. And 50, maybe 75 of them out of 435 are competitive or could go either way. So not many of them are competitive. Okay? Not many of them face really competitive elections. One thing that means these days is for most of these people these days, it's very, very important, more important for them to win their party primary than to win the general election, because for most of them, the general election will not be competitive. One party or the other has a big edge. But you could get beat in your primary, and a few of them do every year. Right now, we find in the early months of the second Donald Trump administration, we know Donald Trump has tried to flood the zone. We said he was engaging in kind of a shock and awe. He's deporting people right and left. Some people have been sent to El Salvador. He's got Elon Musk going through the federal government and firing people left and right and trying to cut spending. Okay, all kinds of things that he's done. And fairly radical. He's trying to get a great deal done and assert a great deal of authority in just the first few weeks. Okay. Tariffs. Okay, are tariffs a good idea or not? Well, maybe, maybe not. They could do some good. The plan is that they will maybe bring manufacturing back to the United States, but they could just increase people's costs, or maybe make your investments go down in worth, as we've seen in the stock market the past few weeks. Well, what if a Republican member of Congress were upset and wanted to push back at some of the things Trump has done? For the time being, it looks like very, very few, if any of them, are willing to do that, because Trump has raised a lot of money. He's got a big, big war chest. And if any Republican tries to thwart him, he has said what he'll try to do is he'll run somebody, a challenger, against that member in the Republican Party primary. And it seems that many of them are definitely afraid of that. So the point to remember is, because most of these districts are uncompetitive on a two-party basis, most of them are safe for either the Republican or the Democratic Party. Therefore, what most of them are worried about, more than their general election, is trying to survive their party primary and avoid a challenger in that primary. And for a Republican, that might mean somebody would try to out-Trump them or be closer to Trump than they are. For many of them, Trump will be more popular than they are. So to try to push back against Trump for anything is a very, very dangerous, fraught thing for them to try to do right now. All right, that will do it for now, everybody. Next week, we want to look at the way Congress works in Washington, D.C., the committee and subcommittee structure, the process that they go through by which a bill becomes law, so-called regular order that very often is not observed these days on important bills. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Traditions such as the filibuster, and then, which is in the Senate only, of course. And then after all that, we will talk about the budget process a little bit, and then say a few words to wind up this course as a whole before we bring this to a close for the spring term of 2025. So that is what we'll be doing next time, the announcement that I will send to you about a week from now at this time. In the meantime, we have our discussion beginning tomorrow as I speak to you Sunday afternoon. Monday, Tuesday, the 20th and 29th, our discussion 6. Then after that, the final exam and the due date for term papers for those who are doing term papers will be the following week. Thursday, May 8th for the final exam, Friday, May 9th for the term papers, with grades due on Monday, May 12th. Okay, 4 articles to look at for the final exam, 2 on the Supreme Court, 2 on Congress. So if you have trouble with those, get back with me, and I'll try to get that material to you. Also, for the assignment for the discussion early this week, 20th and 29th. If you have not been able to access that link, contact me. I'll try to get that material to you. Otherwise, we will talk to you at least one more time about a week from now at this time. In the meantime, study hard. I hope you will take part in that discussion. You will contact me as needed through the course website or at david.cole@opsu.edu. And we'll talk to you at least one more time about a week from now at this time.